הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו. הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו. הודו, 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 הודו לאדוני כי טוב. הודו, 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 הודו לאדוני כי
The whole question of the European Union is creating much interest and debate in England and worldwide, which leads me to ask why this pressure has come at this time in the 21st century to create a European Union, a European empire which has never existed previously. Of course, that does not mean it should not exist, but I ask, what is the reason behind it? Is there some hidden purpose in creating it? One argument is that it is to prevent war in Europe, which has never been united but has a history of division into tribes and nations, all of which have changed borders, usually because of conquest. Even the Romans failed to unite more than part, prevented by the Huns, the Slavs, and ultimately defeated by the Germanic tribes. Not even the might of Charlemagne or Napoleon or latterly Hitler could achieve this union, although all tried. So what is behind the creation of a European state? You can look at it from a political or from a social or an economic point of view. There are economic and political reasons for it. But at the same time, don't dismiss the fact that there could actually be a biblical background to this. And it may be that this European Union is a fulfillment of something which was foreseen more than 3,000 years ago in the prophecies of the Bible. I want to investigate this aspect of it and see what the Bible says about the creation of a united Europe. Since the events at the end of the 20th century, which saw the ending of the second great superpower, not just Russia but communism, which dominated 1/3 of the world, we begin to realize that the whole of recent history, certainly the last 4,000 years, has seen a succession of empires and kingdoms, and in more recent times we saw, at the beginning of the 20th century, the rise of the communist empire, which at its peak controlled 1/3 of the world. Then in the middle we saw the gradual collapse of the British Empire, which at one time also controlled 1/3 of the world. Now we are seeing, since the collapse of communism, the absolute dominance of America in world politics and economy, but yet alongside it arising a challenging force, that of the emerging European empire. And I use the word empire here deliberately. What is Europe? Is it simply a social union? Is it an economic or commercial union? Is it a political structure? Or is it becoming a threat to the world? Some would suggest previous empires were. Now let me examine this in a little bit more detail. I want to turn you to what the Bible says. We know from our history, as I have already mentioned, that there have been a succession of world empires. One clear definition of this is certainly found in the Bible. In the book of Daniel, a very strong prophecy, you find that Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, translated by Daniel, of an image with a head of gold, chest of silver, thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet a mixture of iron and clay. Daniel was given the translation of that dream. There would be 5 succeeding empires. The head was Nebuchadnezzar himself, and Daniel said clearly that the succeeding empire, the silver, would be the Medes and Persians. The bronze would be the Greeks, the iron, the Romans. Now, the interesting thing about the dream was that the translation literally began to be fulfilled at that time. The significance is that those first 4 empires were fulfilled in the scope or span of biblical history. But yet the Roman Empire, the Iron Legs, was to continue right through until the final dissolution in the 5th century AD. So that although this was a prediction or prophecy, it is possible to see the literal fulfillment of those prophetic empires. The only one not fulfilled is, of course, the feet, a mixture of iron and clay. Many Bible scholars who have tried to translate biblical prophecy have inferred that the iron and clay in the feet of the last empire is a restoration of the Roman Empire. But iron does not mix with clay, so it infers a weak, disunited power, ultimately to be broken by the rock. Nebuchadnezzar's vision, translated by Daniel, referred to the feet being broken and smashed by a rock, which we believe to be Jesus Christ at his second coming. But look at the New Testament in the Bible, where you very clearly get in Revelation 17 a reference to a mystical figure which is called the Mystery Babylon, which would be revealed in the last days. Now look at this in a slightly different context. The first empire was Nebuchadnezzar's. He was responsible for building Babylon. Remember that the Tower of Babel itself was the central part of Babylon. In many languages, the word for Babel and Babylon is synonymous, although in the English we do use slightly different words, but they mean the same thing. Babylon was where Babel was. Babel was in Babylon, right? Now, the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar was destroyed by the Medes and Persians. Where? In Babylon. The Medo-Persian Empire destroyed by the Grecian Empire under Alexander. Where? In Babylon. The Greek Empire was destroyed by the Romans, also in Babylon. But who destroyed the Roman Empire? Well, there are explanations. History suggests that one can laugh a little bit because of this, that the Roman Empire collapsed because of an obsession by civil servants, where it became far too dependent on its structures, its laws, its bureaucracy, and it was destroyed by an accumulation of bureaucracy. But literally, the physical destruction of the Roman Empire was accomplished by the Germanic tribes in Europe, not in Babylon, but in Europe. Now, this is going to lead me to a further evidence here, because I can prove to you, without any question, and this is not a theory, this is an historical fact, and I can prove to you, if it was the German tribes who destroyed the remnants of the Roman Empire in the 5th century in Europe, not Babylon, ultimately part of Babylon physically came to Germany, although not until the end of the 19th century. Babylon is actually today to be seen not only in modern Iraq, but also reconstructed in Germany. But before we go to Germany and have a look at this, we should look at Strasbourg first. I want to leave the question about Germany unanswered because this will take a complete programme on its own, part 3 of this series. And you will understand better if we look at Strasbourg first. Now I want to bring you right up to the 21st century and have a look at the Europe that we are living in now. Not history, nor even Bible prophecy. Let me show you one of the 2 centres of the European Parliament in Strasbourg, which historically was for many centuries part of Germany and is now part of France. In my hands I have an ordinary Bible. It's my Bible. But for many people, they think that the Bible is just history, or, yes, that it's full of prophecy about the future. And so many people think that all prophecy must be in the future, not in our lifetime, but sometime in the future. But I want to try to show you in a very definite way, a very clear way, that we are actually living in the time when Bible prophecy is being fulfilled, literally today in your lifetime. For example, the Bible speaks very clearly that Daniel had, well, at least Nebuchadnezzar had a vision, which Daniel was able to translate, of an image which represented 5 empires, starting with Nebuchadnezzar and going on to the Medes and Persians and so on, down to the Greeks and the Romans. Now, we do believe that the last empire that is spoken of in Daniel's vision is a restoration of the Roman Empire, but we believe that actually we can find that restored Roman Empire not just in the Bible, but today, here, not in the future, but in the day in which you are actually living at the moment. Now, where is this restored Roman Empire? What is it? Well, I want to take you on a visit and show you where it is and what part it's playing in your own life at this very moment. Come with me and let's have a look. I'm standing right in Strasbourg in France, outside the Parliament building for the European Union. Now, this Parliament building has been modelled on the painting by Bruegel showing the Tower of Babel, the unfinished tower, and this building is built to represent an unfinished building, but it is the complete European Parliament building in use right now, and I'm standing outside of it. It cost £8 billion. That's $12 billion to complete this, and it was only finished right in December 2000. Now it's in use. Years ago, when the European politicians wanted to advertise the purpose behind the European Union, to persuade us to become part of it, they produced an advertising poster based on the painting of the Tower of Babel by the famous painter Peter Bruegel in 1563. The European Parliament building is modelled on that painting, But looking at the poster, it shows Babel with the slogan in French, "Many tongues, one voice," inverting God's judgment on Babel. Also, the 5-pointed stars of the European flag have been inverted. But why? This is a recognized occultic sign. With the points down, it reveals the devil's head with horns. Look even at the European flag with its 12 stars. These normally signify the crown of Mary, Queen of Heaven. But in Babylonian culture, Queen of Heaven was the legendary title given to the earthly mother of Nimrod, builder of Babylon. But what is Babel? According to biblical history, the city of Babylon was built shortly after Noah's flood by one of his descendants named Nimrod. The people joined together in order to make a name for themselves and to increase in power, and built a great city with at its center a great tower and temple called Babel. This tower was a symbol of rebellion against God, intended to reach heaven and to prove that there was no God, or if he existed, the tower would be high enough to escape a second flood, punishment for their sin. God destroyed the Tower of Babel, and the city became known for sin and rebellion against God. Eventually, in the year 586 BC, God even allowed the children of Abraham, the Jews, to be driven into exile in Babylon because of their sin. While filming these scenes, I asked a journalist born in Strasbourg if she understood the meaning of the tower. She did, and confirmed that the members of the European Parliament also understood that it represented Babel from the Bible, but that the purpose of the European Union was to finish what Nimrod and the people together had failed to do some 3,500 years ago. What would they complete? The tower? Or the power of a united people to rebel against God, totally and finally, by their acceptance of sin as a normal way of life? So this European Parliament building is a symbol of man's pride and rebellion against God. A place which must ultimately be destroyed by God because of sin. A modern tower, temple, as a symbol of the people of the 21st century uniting to say, God is dead, let us make our own gods. Later, Daniel's vision of the future ending with the restoration of the Roman Empire, which would be finally destroyed by God, was also given in Babylon.
I want to show you here the model of the scaffolding. These rings round are intended to be a model or an imitation of scaffolding on an unfinished building. But this building is finished and in use. So in other words, they're trying to demonstrate on every part of this the unfinished Tower of Babel, Babylon. But this is the European Parliament in Strasbourg. This is not Babylon. This is Strasbourg in the European Union.
We have linked Europe to Babylon, and we will continue this when we see Babylon in Germany in the last part of this series. But what about the restoration of the Roman Empire? In Strasbourg, we have the first link with Rome. If the Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, and we are now in the 21st century, that's 16 centuries. Where has the Roman Empire been during that period? Well, the Roman Empire split into two during the 4th century, the western part still with Rome as its capital, and the eastern part with a new capital in Constantinople, that's modern Istanbul. As the political power of Rome declined, its spiritual power, following the conversion of Constantine, remained, but still divided along the political line from which in turn was to develop into the Western or Roman Church and the Eastern or Orthodox Church. So the Roman Empire never actually went away, but the legs of iron existed until recently, the power passing into the Church, continuing through the European prince-bishops, especially in Germany, and the Vatican, which became and still is a separate state within Europe, until now, when during the last 50 years a new empire, based on the Treaty of Rome, made up of many nations, temporal, mingled with the spiritual, to become today the final empire, or the feet, the iron mixed with the clay from Daniel's vision. Interestingly, it was Martin Luther who was the first to make the spiritual break from the Roman Church. But then came Henry VIII in Britain, who, in order to further his own ends, made a complete break with the Roman Church and established the English Church, together with the Protestant revival, which still exists today. Britain, breaking away from Rome in the 16th century, is very significant, because this is where we stand today, not totally in agreement with the European Union, torn between kinship with America and union with Europe. Is this a critical factor? Is God in his wisdom intervening to deliver us in England from what the European Union is about to become? Is it strange that for over 4 centuries this has been a spiritual as much as a political issue? Also that there is ongoing debate over the closeness and wisdom of our political union at the same time as a second debate over the possibility of reunion between Protestant and Catholic churches? The legs of iron have become the feet of iron mixed with clay. This incompatible mixture of the revived empire is destined to be destroyed by something not made with man's hands, the Son of God, Jesus Christ, at his near return to set up an everlasting kingdom. Not the 1,000-year Reich envisioned by Hitler, but a heavenly kingdom ruled by the Prince of Peace.
I've shown you the restoration of the Roman Empire and the very center of it in Strasbourg. Now, I want you to come with me and we're going to show you the second part where we explain the book of Revelation, and I'm going to take you now into Brussels, and I want you to see what Revelation is speaking about of the Scarlet Woman and the Beast.
It is interesting because there are actually 2 main symbols used by the European Union, both of which are found in the Bible. The first symbol, which we have already seen, is the first part of this film. Parliament in Strasbourg, where they've built the new European Parliament building in the shape of the Tower of Babel. But the second symbol adopted by Europe is far worse than the first. In fact, it can only be described as evil, even demonic, in its portrayal of abuse and depravity. It portrays a criminal act against women, which would lead to the imprisonment of the perpetrator. Now, this is shocking, and I need to explain it. I find that there are three origins or sources of this second symbol. But firstly, what is it and where is it? It is the sculpture of the woman on the beast, which is the main feature displayed outside the building of the Council of Europe in Brussels. Its source can clearly be proved. What it represents is the Greek myth of the rape of Europa. It is from this myth and the woman that the continent of Europe got its name. However, we also find this same image of the woman riding the beast in the Bible. It's in Revelation chapter 17 and chapter 13. And the beast itself is shown in the vision of Daniel in the Old Testament, in Daniel chapter 7. In Greek mythology, where we look at the first source of this symbol, the story is that Zeus, the father of the gods, spied a beautiful woman, Europa, alone on a Phoenician beach, which, by the way, is part of Israel today, and lusted after her. He transformed himself into a bull of dazzling whiteness with horns shaped like a crescent moon and lay down at her feet. She climbed on his back, and he plunged with her into the waves of the sea before raping her. Europa conceived a son, and after her death, she received divine honors as Queen of Heaven, while the bull dissolved into the constellation in the sky known today and seen today as Taurus. As well as the sculpture outside the building of the Council of Europe in Brussels, both Brussels and Strasbourg European Union parliaments also contain paintings of the woman on the beast. But as if this is not enough, the member states of the European Union have been using this symbol openly since its very commencement, where it is most visible for all to see exactly what it represents. For example, this image of the woman on the beast appeared as early as 1948 on the German 5 Deutschmark banknote. She is seen riding the beast in a painting done as early as 1979 on the Berlin Wall. And in 1984 she appeared on a British stamp to commemorate the second European parliamentary elections. In 1992 she appeared on the German EQ coin. The EQ came before the euro. She's on a painting in the airport lounge in Brussels. And the most obvious and clear picture is one which appeared on a German telephone card for everyone to use. Finally, today, this woman has reappeared with the introduction of the new euro currency, where we find this same woman on the beast, on the back of the new €2 coin in Greece. This makes us ask the question, are the perpetrators of the European Union trying to tell us something? Are they suggesting that Europe today is being raped? If so, is it politically or financially or spiritually? And by whom? But I also referred to the Bible, where in Revelation 17, this woman is clearly shown as a prostitute sitting on a beast. Here clearly described as having 7 heads and 10 horns. I will explain this later. But the woman also has a second name, because written on her forehead is the name Mystery Babylon, which I will also explain later when I show you that ancient Babylon is actually today to be found in Berlin in Europe. Growing up under Greek and Roman culture as well as Hebrew, the men of the Bible must have known the myths which were an important part of the culture surrounding them, especially because even the New Testament was written in Greek, and the inscription over the cross of Jesus was in these three languages: Latin, Hebrew, and Greek. Probably Jesus, but certainly Paul, who used illustrations from the Olympic Games and preached in Athens, and John the Apostle, who wrote Revelation, would have understood the myth of Europa and the bull. In Revelation 13, the beast is described as rising out of the sea and having 7 heads and 10 horns. In the Old Testament, this beast appears in 2 forms. The first in Daniel 7, where as the 4th king or kingdom, it also has 10 horns. But the most significant is the one which I will explain next. In every case we have seen today in Europe, this woman, Europa, can be seen riding a beast. Note that where this story appears in the Bible, the forehead of the woman on the beast is branded with the name Mystery Babylon, Revelation chapter 17. When Jesus revealed to John the woman of Revelation 17 sitting on a scarlet beast with many horns, was he prophetically speaking of Europe today? We know that Revelation was a prophecy, but is this being fulfilled? And why was this woman called Mystery Babylon the Great? And who does the powerful beast with horns represent? In mythology, the woman Europa clung to the father of the gods, who had disguised himself as a bull with crescent-shaped horns. The symbol for the father of the Middle East pagan god, Baal, as we know him from archaeology and from the Bible, Zeus or Jupiter as we know him from Greek or Roman culture, was a bull with great crescent horns. And the ruling god of ancient Babylon and the Middle East was the moon god, again depicted as a bull with crescent horns, or simply as the crescent moon. We have every reason to believe that Allah is the same moon god that Muhammad chose to worship, and who is worshipped by many people today. The crescent moon is the universal symbol of Islam on its mosques and flags everywhere today. So what connection has Europe to Islam? Looking at history, from the beginning Islam has struggled with Europe. First the incursions of Islam into Europe through Turkey, the Balkans, Spain, and France, to overwhelm Europe by war. Then the European Crusader invasions into the Bible land of Israel to wrest control of the land back from Islam. Then, 100 years ago, oil was found in the Middle East, making the Islamic nations politically and economically the most powerful and desirable on earth. A violent union between Europe and Islam began. In World War I, the European armies fought each other in the Middle East. In 1917, when the French and the British were driving the occupying Turks and Germans out of Israel and Jerusalem and the surrounding lands, the British government cut deals with both Jew and Arab to gain maximum support, laying the foundation of today's conflicts. Britain promised, first to the Jews through Lord Balfour, to view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and second to the Arabs, through the British Commissioner in Egypt, to recognise and support the independence of the Arabs from the Turks. This violent union of Europe and the lands of Islam began in World War I, took another twist in World War II. On the 30th of November 1941, the Muslim Grand Mufti of Jerusalem met with Hitler to make a covenant. The Muslim Arabs would give their support to Hitler's war on condition that after eradicating the Jews in Europe, Hitler would then eradicate the Jewish national homeland in Palestine. Arafat, with whom Europe deals today, is the grandnephew of that Grand Mufti who made this covenant with Hitler. Since World War II, the union between Islam and Europe has continued. A peaceful invasion of Europe has taken place. Migrant workers and refugees have been welcomed in. Germany has 3 million Muslim Turks. France has 5 million North African Muslims. And Britain has 2 million Muslims from her former colonies and elsewhere. Islam is the second largest and fastest growing religion in Britain today. Europe has been penetrated extensively. Islam welcomed liberally. Land donated freely for her mosques and schools. And whilst European culture is suppressed in Islamic countries, and the practice of the Christian faith forbidden by law, in our European countries, we are afraid to offend Islam. Our European Christian leaders make loving, interfaith overtures towards the Babylonian moon god Allah to recognize him as another equal revelation of the God of the Bible. Europe, Islam, and Israel. The European Union, following in the tradition of Hitler, is one of the greatest political and financial supporters of Arafat's Palestine against the Jews. Europe, month by month, bankrolls Arafat's terrorist organizations to the tune of tens of millions of dollars from the European taxpayer's pocket. Is Europe, the woman, about to be raped by the bull Islam she is riding? National newspapers published in June this year the fact that because of the open doors policy towards immigration in Belgium, Belgium has become the headquarters for the Muslim invasion of Europe. Control of the militant Al-Qaeda forces is being concentrated here, where the Centre for the Control of the European Union, Brussels, is. This is the place we are in today, spiritually. Do you understand how serious the threat is from Islam? Muslims worship Allah, whom we have already shown to be Baal, or the moon god. Yet in the West they are invited to take part in interfaith services. In the West it is said that there are 3 religions of the book: the Jews who believe the Old Testament, the Christians who believe in the entire Bible, and the Muslims with their Quran. But Allah is not our God at all. Look at their symbols. The crescent on the mosques and on the flags of the Muslims is in the shape of the horns of a bull. It appears they are worshipping Baal, a bull, who is the devil himself. Then when you compare with the symbolism from Revelation chapter 13 and 17, the rape of Europe by the beast, again the beast is significant because of its horns. Today, we are seeing the rise of a militant Muslim fanaticism, which is threatening the stability of the world. President Bush recognized this in his declaration of a war against terrorism. And it is not just a question in Israel of the conflict being over territory. The fact is that the Muslims intend to destroy Israel totally. But they may have to destroy America first, because America is the strength behind Israel. They not only want Jerusalem or the so-called occupied territories, they will not rest until every Jew is massacred and out of the land. And after Israel, the next enemy is the church. Militant Muslims hate the cross. They hate every Christian symbol. Even now, all over the world, wherever they see Christian symbols, they're building mosques to show the ascendancy of Islam over the Christian faith. This is part of the great battle we are in the last days. It's serious, and we need to pray. Saudi Arabia has been building mosques worldwide, even where there are few Muslims. Yet in Saudi Arabia, you can be jailed for having a Bible, and no churches can be built there. When the city of Rome allowed the building of a mosque near the Vatican, Saudi press saw this as a surrender to Islam. The West may practice interfaith and invite leading imams into Christian cathedrals and churches, but the Islamic cities of Mecca and Medina, and now the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, are forbidden to anyone who does not practice Islam.
We are right here in Berlin. As you know, Berlin is not only the capital of Germany, but one of the main centers of the European Union. And here we're standing outside the Pergamum Museum. Inside this Pergamum Museum are two major things. One is the throne or the seat of Satan, referred to in Revelation chapter 2, verse 13, and also the gate to Babylon. And both of these are not reconstructions, they are the originals, taken from Pergamum and from Babylon. This is the way that the children of Israel would go in their captivity into Babel and into Babylon when they were taken to Babylon for captivity. So walk with me down the actual processional street here. Now in front of me I'm actually looking at the Ishtar Gate, which is known because it has 337 snake gods on it. 337 in the Hebrew is the numerology for Sheol or hell. So in effect, this is the gateway to hell that you can see here. Now you can see actually the gate in front of you. This is not a model. This is actually the original gate taken from Babylon. It was created 600 years before Christ and has been brought here and reconstructed here in the museum in Berlin.
In the previous part of this documentary, we saw the woman Europa sitting on the beast. That's the image of the European Union. But when Jesus showed John the woman in Revelation 17, whom we now believe to be Europa, she had a name on her forehead, Mystery Babylon. I can explain the mystery of how she receives this name, and also I can demonstrate the connection between Babylon and Europe. We saw it firstly in Strasbourg, the Tower of Babel, and now the original Babylon is actually in Europe. 600 years before Christ, after years of rebellion against God, the Jewish people were driven captive from Jerusalem into exile in Babylon. The haunt of demons, sorceries and spells, the very place chosen by the devil Lucifer to establish his world government in rebellion against God. In the Bible, in Psalm 137, we see that these exiles wept by the rivers of Babylon when they remembered Jerusalem. Why? Well, in Babylon was the ziggurat, the rebuilt Tower of Babel, symbol of defiance against God, and the temple of Marduk, Baal by his other name, the dragon god, an evil spirit worshipped by self-torture and human sacrifice. Surely the devil himself. The grand processional entrance to all this was through the Ishtar Gate, covered with a swarm of monsters, including 337 snake dragons. This number 337 in Hebrew numerology means Sheol or hell. Surely, this was the gateway to hell on earth. No wonder, when by a miracle God released the Jews from Babylon 70 years later, their mouths were filled with laughter and their tongues with singing. But where is Babylon today? Oh yes, it's being rebuilt by Saddam Hussein outside Baghdad in Iraq. But before he did this, the original Babylon came to Germany. Historically, first the Medes and Persians inherited the evil spirit of Babylon when they captured the city in the year 539 BC. Overthrown by Alexander the Great in 331 BC, he had 10,000 men rebuild the temple of Marduk and cause daily sacrifices to be made to Babylon's dragon god until his premature death in 323 BC. By the year 64, BC, Rome overthrew the Greeks to become the new world empire. Daniel prophesied that this empire would continue in changing forms until the return of Christ. Through the Romans, the spirit of Babylon again struck the rebellious people of God, destroying their temple in Jerusalem in AD 70 and scattering the Jews throughout the world in an exile which was to last until the miraculous re-establishment of Israel in 1948. After the collapse of Imperial Rome, the popes of Rome designated successive European kings as Holy Roman Emperors, political leaders of the papal Holy Roman Empire. The title of Holy Roman Emperor was held by the Germanic Habsburg dynasty for hundreds of years. They also hold the title of King of Jerusalem, granted in perpetuity after the European Crusaders took Jerusalem from the Turks in 1061. They still carry the title today. In 1898, Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm II visited the Holy Land in his capacity as King of Jerusalem. And 1 year later, he began excavations at the ancient site of Babylon. In 1913, he brought to Berlin the first pieces of the gate and the processional way that are covered with the 337 snake dragons, Babylon's entrance to hell on earth. 1 year later, Germany was at war with the world. 10 million died in just 4 years. By 1930, the entire processional way was re-erected in Berlin. Was it Babylon's snake dragon god, the devil himself, that spoke through Hitler, announcing the final solution to the Jewish question? A solution which resulted in the Holocaust of 6 million Jews in Europe. Not only that, but Hitler's Second World War, that's from the years 1939 through to 1945, was truly hell on earth. More than 55 million died worldwide, Germany in ruins, and Berlin divided between the superpowers of East and West. While East Berlin retained the Ishtar Gate, Babylon's symbol of hatred towards the Jews, West Germany moved into a period of grace. Chancellor Adenauer, a devout Christian and lifetime opponent of Nazism, recognized the biblical truth that God will bless those who bless the Jews. At a time when his own country lay in ruins, he offered war reparations to Israel, and the German post-war economic miracle began. This changed after East and West Germany reunited in 1990. Today, Germany's vaunted economic miracle is in crisis. I wonder why. The father of King Nebuchadnezzar laid the following foundation stone in the first Babylon. This is what it was written. At the behest of the gods Nabu and Marduk, who ordered me to secure the foundations of Babylon on the very heart of the underworld, so that its head can vie with heaven itself, I have bowed my neck and done as I have been commanded. Berlin, still with its gate from Babylon, is once again the capital city of Germany, and Chancellor Schroeder moved the seat of German government from Bonn in West Germany to Berlin. President Clinton once called Berlin, the heart of a united Europe. What kind of a heart will it be? During the Second World War, Hitler outlined his New Europe policy for the control of post-war Europe under the following headings: the common European currency, the harmonization of European rates of exchange, the European Economic Community, the European Agricultural Order, and so on. Despite his defeat, identical plans to his are being implemented in the European Union today. Or, whose plans are they? Do they originate in the prophecies of Daniel, a kingdom that will not remain united, destined to be swept away like the feet of iron and clay? No wonder Christian believers are warned in Revelation chapter 18, "Come out of Babylon, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. For her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities." Daniel, interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue in chapter 2, warns that the spirit of Babylon would continue its activity after the fall of that ancient kingdom, inhabiting succeeding world kingdoms down to our present day. Only when Christ returns will the spirit of Babylon finally be overthrown. That's Daniel chapter 2, verses 33 and 34, and Revelation chapter 19 from verse 11. But what kingdoms do the feet of the image made of iron and clay represent today? The Treaty of Rome has brought together in Europe an unlikely mixture in the multitude of nations in the European Union. Is this the final image which shall be broken by the return of Christ? As I explained at the beginning, the Bible is not just history, nor is it only prophecy of the future. The Bible is a living book, and we are living in the days of the Bible now in Europe. Europe in particular is dominated by demonic satanic power. The Tower of Babel is rebuilt with your tax money. In France, the woman and the beast are part not only of Brussels, but your lives today. Babylon and the gateway to hell are in Berlin, influencing how Europe decides the way you and your children will live. Even worse than these last three things I have shown you is the final one. What must be the most awesome, evil thing in the world, described only once in the whole Bible, is the actual place where Satan's seat or throne is. Surely, you say, that was 2,000 years ago. It must have been destroyed, if it ever existed. This thing must be so evil, so terrible, that it could be described as the place where Satan himself lives. Truly, only one place in the whole Bible is described in this way. Where was it? In Pergamum. Where is it today? In Berlin, in the center of Europe. The Bible speaks about it in Revelation chapter 2. To the angel of the church in Pergamos write, "I know your works and where you live, even where Satan's seat is, and you hold fast my name and have not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwells." The gigantic altar of Pergamum dominates Germany's Pergamum Museum in Berlin. Originally situated in Asia Minor, that's modern Turkey, the temple at Pergamum with its altar was the center of emperor worship. The price of refusing to acknowledge the emperor as God: ritual murder on the altar. The Bible calls it Satan's seat or Satan's throne, and on its steps early Christians were martyred for their faith in Christ. German archaeologist Karl Humann found it in almost perfect condition in the late 1800s and carefully shipped every stone to Berlin. In 1902, Kaiser Wilhelm II celebrated its erection in Berlin as the proudest monument to his reign, with an extravagant festival to the pagan gods. It is significant that within a short time of this, the history of Germany was to be dominated by a sequence of events which could only be attributed to satanic control. Following the Welsh revival in Britain in 1904, its effect in Britain was known worldwide, came the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in 1908, almost simultaneously in an Anglican church in Monk Wearmouth in the United Kingdom, in Azusa Street in Los Angeles in America, and soon afterwards in Kassel in Germany. People gathering together in prayer and worship began speaking in unknown tongues. This was the beginning of the worldwide outpouring of God's Holy Spirit, marked by this phenomena known as speaking in tongues, just as on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2 in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, Germany became the principal seat of rejection of this new move from God. At a meeting of the Evangelical Alliance of Germany in Berlin, the evangelical churches issued what is known as the 1909 Berlin Declaration, with the following conclusions. The so-called Pentecostal movement is not from above, but from below. Demons are at work in it, and led with cunning by Satan, lies are mixed together with truth in order to lead the children of God astray. Neither the personal faithfulness and devotion of some individual leading brethren, nor the healings, tongues, and prophecy which accompany this movement can change our conviction that this movement is from below. The Spirit in this movement produces spiritual and physical works of power, but it is a false spirit. It has exposed itself as such. That's what they said. Yet God promised in His Word, in Joel 2 and Acts 2, that He would pour out His Spirit on all flesh. Not just the showers of the first Pentecost, but the heavy latter rain that would bring the last abundant harvest of souls before the return of Christ. As a result of this declaration, by the 1920s, the German church had become the seat of modern biblical criticism and liberal theology, questioning the truth of Holy Scripture, undermining the very foundations of faith. Just as the move of God's Spirit went worldwide, so did this diabolical lie. The idea was promoted that the Bible was not the inspired Word of God, only an historical storybook, a collection of poetry and myths, especially the incarnation of Christ. God was stripped of his divinity, his word stripped of authority, and the Jewish people of their irrevocable election and calling. With the long European church tradition of anti-Semitism, this led easily to Hitler's Holocaust of the Jews, with almost no protest from the leadership of the church. Hitler was so impressed by the Pergamum altar in Berlin that in 1934 he commissioned a grand reproduction to be made for his Nazi rallies in Nuremberg. Here, from Satan's seat, he decreed death to the Jews and all those not possessing Aryan blood. Mainstream churches officially supported Hitler, but many Germans from all denominations paid with their lives for holding fast to their faith in Christ and for sheltering Jews during the ensuing Nazi persecution. Thank God, in recent years, led by the new charismatic churches, there were many repentances for the 1909 Berlin Declaration, notably at the March for Jesus in Berlin in 1994. However, in 1996, the Berlin Declaration, which had been a spiritual Berlin Wall, dividing believers in Germany, fell. After many years of heart-searching, the German Evangelical Alliance, together with the Union of Free Pentecostal Churches, signed a joint declaration of reconciliation called the Kassel Declaration, agreeing to pray together for revival and to work together in evangelism. Now, the door is open for another move of the Holy Spirit. But again, Satan has made a significant move. After 1945, with Berlin divided and separated from the Pergamum altar, Germany was rebuilt and experienced an economic boom unparalleled, both in German and European history. Now, since the collapse of the Berlin Wall, the reunited city has been rebuilt and prepared to take its place as the historical heart of Germany and the center of a united Europe. In 1999, the Reichstag building, made famous by Hitler, destroyed in 1945 and now completely rebuilt, was officially opened. and the German government finally moved from Bonn back to Berlin. For the first time in 50 years, the German government has returned to its place where the seat of Satan is. What is the spiritual significance? Why has this move taken place at this time of the creation of a single European state? Will there be pressure for the European Parliament with its operations split between Strasbourg and Brussels to be relocated in one of the many vacant historical buildings in Berlin where the seat of Satan is?